very beautiful. Thank you very much. Before the service, I was offered a position on the Rolling Crones. I'm glad I didn't have to sing that song. I couldn't have. So good morning again. So our theme today is the idea of being open, welcoming, and receptive. And it comes from the global heart vision of our organization. We see our communities as being open, receptive, and welcoming of all people, all faiths, and all paths to God. And so that's where we are. That's who we are. We are here to be an opening. We are not a judging teaching that says that, you know, this person is good and this person not so much, and this person over here needs some restorative therapy, and other than Sue, of course, with the books. But you know, and you guys have accepted me even though I need therapy too. So that's a good thing. So we don't have a problem with people coming into our center. Have you noticed? Yes. This is yes. This is yes. This is no. So have you noticed? Yes. Okay. So we welcome new people. However, I want to take this idea of this open, welcoming, and receptive and explore it a little bit more deeply. And I get this from an insight that I had a couple nights ago when my lovely wife got up in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden something went scampering across my legs in the bed. And fortunately it wasn't a spider, and fortunately it wasn't a Great Dane. It was our little dachshund, Cassie. And some of you may know that I have not been open, receptive, and welcoming to our dog, if you've been around for a while, of the idea of having a dog at all. And then I'm not open, receptive, and welcoming to the idea of the dog sleeping in the bed. And so here she was, and she had come in after we were both asleep and decided to curl up with Cynthia, who is open, welcome, and receptive to the dog. I don't get why she likes Cynthia better than me, but it's the dog's problem. I came to realize that I had tolerated and allowed the dog in my house, but I had not been open, welcome, and receptive to the dog. There's a difference, right? There's a heart energy of being really open and welcoming. It's a different energy. The difference in the energy is if you would to come to somebody's door that had invited you over, and they open the door and say, "Oh yeah, you're welcome." It's like, yeah, thanks, I'm here, which is different than, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you, and so glad you're here. Welcome, come on in." Okay, a different heart energy, right? You're tolerated, you're allowed in the other place, in the other energy, but you're not welcomed. I've been in parties, and maybe you have too, where you're with a group of people that you may not know, and you may not know a whole lot of people at the party, and you notice a group of people that are standing around having a conversation, and you walk up, drink in hand, and decide to try and join into that circle. And I found that I get one of three receptions. Either the circle never opens, right? The circle kind of somebody sees, and they'll kind of make a little opening so I can kind of squeeze in there. And usually if the circle doesn't open after a while, I'm standing there looking, and people see me, but they don't let in. I go on, move on. The third response is they open up, invite me in, say, "Hey, join us. We're having a conversation about the effect of Baroque architecture on Papago Indian dwellings. And please feel free to join in with us." Which one do I feel open, welcoming, and receptive? It's that last one, right? That last one. Even the second one, where I'm kind of allowed into the circle, it's not really welcomed into the circle. And of course, the first one feels like, I'm just an outsider. So it's the energy that I want to invite us to bring as we contemplate ourselves in the center. Because when I first came here, and actually even since then, I've heard this center described sometimes as cliquish. And I don't find the center cliquish. However, I do find that people are comfortable with the people they know, which is kind of a universal thing, right? We're comfortable with the people we already know. And it's hard for somebody who comes in new to feel open, welcomed, and received, right? If we're all talking with somebody that we already know. And so I know some people who have been here for 6 or 7 years who said to me they got tired of being asked if they were here for the first time. I've heard from people who come and say, I love your Sunday service, I love your talk, But man, I went over to the social hall for lunch afterwards, and nobody sat down and talked to me. You know? And so it's just having that consciousness of, can I see this other person? Can I get to know them? I noticed that Charlie, we have one of the new people here, that Charlie got engaged in a conversation with him, you know, in the kitchen there, and you know, began to have an engagement, have an open, welcoming, who are you? Can I get to know you? See, we have an idea of some of the people who've been here for a very long time. You know, there's a certain set of experiences that you've had together. You know, many of you literally physically helped build this church, and you've had, you know, group outings at Patrick's Point and place all sorts of different things like that. And you have this history, and you have these stories, and you have this community together. And for those who come in later, like myself, who have not experienced that, sometimes it's very hard to break into that. And yet each person who comes here has their own stories and their own life experiences that will enrich the whole if we will let them in. And so the question is, can I let go of having to just stick with people who know my story and I'm familiar with, and also add this other person and these other stories and these other experiences to us? So people are not just tolerated, but they're welcomed. And what I want to also say is, this isn't a one-way street, because some people come in and they're very invisible. They're the people who had said that they'd been here for, you know, kept getting asked if you're new here, you know, after a while admitted, you know, I've been pretty invisible here. You know, Cherie Daughter, who just finished our practitioner training, it's like, you know, I would say, you know, people would say, oh, who's in your practitioner class? And I'd say, well, so, you know, Chris Johnson, everybody knows Chris, and Cherie Daughter, you know, and they go, who? Cherie Daughter. She's been here for about 5 or 6 years, you know, and like that. And we have a tendency, when I first started dating Cynthia, my wife, who was here, who's been in this congregation for about 20 years, I would say, well, I'm dating Cynthia Bella, and people would say, who? It's like, I kind of look at them like, she's been here for 20 years. She took care of James and Andrea's kids and all this stuff. And I finally learned the clue. The clue was, say, Barbara Bella's daughter, because everybody knew her mom. Part of the reason was that her mom had gotten involved with the church, and Cynthia not quite so much. And part of the reason is, you know, for the newer people, it's also an invitation to get involved and not completely play invisible. We play invisible when we don't feel comfortable. When we don't feel comfortable. And so for both of us, on both sides of that equation, can we be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable and go meet somebody we might not know? Can you today go have a conversation with somebody that you don't know well in the center and just find out something more about them? Even sometimes when you know them well. I was just talking with, I heard Marilyn Miller and Sherry Miller, not related, who have been in this church for gobs of years combined, just found out something new about each other today out in the hallway there while we were talking. They both rescue dogs and different types of dogs, and apparently they didn't know that about each other. Can we have conversations with each other and find out something new? Can we be curious about this other person? I'd like to get to know you. Who are you? And be curious about that. So I'm going to invite us to play with that. I want to also look at this at a different level. Are we okay with playing with that this week? And maybe beyond this week? Great. Because right now we're also watching Open, Welcoming, and Receptive playing out on a national political level, right? And I don't want to pick on anybody, because this is, right now it's kind of high drama, but it's not new, is it? It's not new. Practically since this country was, I think since the Pilgrims landed and formed the Puritans, you know, brought their Puritan religion to, you know, Plymouth Rock and Plymouth Colony, you know, they wouldn't accept anybody else. You know, I think it was William Penn who had to move down over to Pennsylvania to practice his religion, because he was kicked out by the Puritans because they didn't want him there, you know, and so on and so on. So we've had this idea of closed door, you know, now I'm here and you can't join me if you're not like me. My first wife's parents and family have owned some property up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. They're on their 3rd generation of being there. And they noticed something really interesting. Beautiful property. It's 40 acres on the top of a hill. It's got old growth redwoods on one side of it and a beautiful view out to the ocean on the other side of it. And they noticed that new people would come in, and as soon as they get bought in and as soon as they got settled, the next thing they would do was join the group that said no more people into this community. I'm here now. I don't know anybody new. Not after me. I'm good. I'm done. I grew up in Oregon, as many of you know, and there was a big migration of Californians into Oregon in the 70s and late 70s, and what we'd find is a whole lot of people would come in, and then it's like, we don't want any more Californians. Yeah, but you were just a few weeks ago one of those, you know? So we have this thing that, you know, that we don't want other people. Once we're comfortable, we're here, we got this, let's build a wall, okay? And the wall is virtual and invisible. Some people want to make it very visible. But we have this fear of the unknown, this human tendency to want to stay with who we're comfortable with and with our comfort zone and with our known. And so to go meet somebody new, to go step out of that, is to take a step into the unknown a little bit. And that triggers off our one of our core human fears, fear of the unknown, right? So I want to invite us to be able to take a look at that. As we think about this on the political level, on the national level, we're all immigrants or children of immigrants, excepting unless you're a Native American, right? We all immigrated here somewhere, from somewhere, or our family did. Even if you were, can trace your heritage back to the Mayflower, you still immigrated here from somewhere else. I think it was Sarah Palin who said that the Native Americans should go back to Nativia. Apparently they're immigrants too. But we've all come here and had to be received. And many cultures have come here. If you think of over the history of America, the Irish have come and been rejected. The Poles have come and been rejected. The Italians have come and been rejected. That's why if you go to certain older cities, there's an Italian district, and there's a German district, and there's the Chinese district, and all that, because they all banded together in order for some support. Okay? Can we be open and receptive? So all of us were once newbies at this Center for Spiritual Living. Every single person who's here today at one time walked into this place for the first time, right? Okay. And how did you feel? And would you like to have been received? And would you like to have been welcomed? And some of you were, and maybe some of you didn't have that experience. And would you be willing to do it a little bit differently than it has been done before to be part of that open and welcoming presence? So it's not just the leadership, it's not just me, it's not just Reverend Sue or Charlie or the board person back there or even the ushers and greeters, it's all of us. Can we be welcoming and receptive? And can we be welcoming and receptive to each other and start to learn more about each other? So I just want to invite you to play with that, to deepen that consciousness, to continue with that. I want to take a look at this idea finally at one other level, different level. And that is, how welcome and receptive and inclusive am I with new ideas in my life? With new ideas in my life. See, when Cynthia moved in with me about 1.5 years ago, I had my kitchen, I like to cook, I had my kitchen organized in a certain way. Everything was in its place, and everything was where it belonged. And then she came along. That enemy of the organization, of my style of organization, by the way. And she'd put things in different places. Dang it. Dang it. It's terrible. Do you feel sorry for me? No, you shouldn't. Can we be open to something new? Can we be open to a new idea? Can we be open to somebody else's way of doing something that might be a little bit different than ours? We all have that little part of us that wants to say, either I or we have always done it this way. I've always done it this way. So therefore, that must be the right way to do it. Watch two people when they get together in a relationship for the first time and they're celebrating Christmas for the first time. But my family always celebrates Christmas this way, right? And the other person celebrates it a different way. Can we be open and receptive? Can we create something new? Can we play with that energy? Can we be curious about, well, how does that work for you? See, the outer reticence that we have when we feel in resistance to the new coming in out here, we're resistant in here first. How open and receptive am I to new ideas? See, to let something new in is to be uncomfortable. It's to be uncomfortable. It's to play with the unfamiliar, right? How many of us love to be uncomfortable? A couple. There's a friend of mine who works with a model of change, and the leading edge of it is called the edge walkers. These are the people who it's like, let's change to be changing, man. I kind of came into the center with kind of that attitude about it, and then learned that a whole lot of people here like to kind of keep things a little more stable and grow more slowly. Let's put it that way. And so it was fun to have that energy and to find the balance of what works. And so we grow a little bit and we grow a little bit. But that uncomfortable nature is part of change. It's part of change. If I want to change, guess what? I have to move into some place that I've never been before and be uncomfortable. A little bit at least. So we'll tolerate circumstances that are really unpleasant, that are really life-quelching, life-destroying, just because they're comfortable. You've met people like that. One or two of you have had phases in your life where you've been that. Our motto in this teaching is change your thinking, change your life. There's an operative word in there, right? That gets repeated a couple of times. Change. And we're kind of called what's called the New Thought movement. We're part of what's called the New Thought movement. We're not kind of, we are part of the New Thought movement, which is the idea about seeing things new, seeing things with a fresh thought, seeing things from a fresh perspective. In a way, we're being called to be consciousness artists, to look at this out here and see it in a fresh and new way. Because we've all been trained how we're supposed to see this, right? Yes? Right. And it's the right way to see it, right? And your way of seeing it, and your way of seeing it, and your way of seeing it, and my way of seeing it are all the right way, but they're all different. Have you noticed? Yes? Yes. Okay. So there isn't a right way. Can we look at something and look at it fresh? Now, this is that wonderful Zen concept of beginner's mind. Charlie and I were teasing and joking about, being newcomers here. I always like to put my hand up when they ask for newcomers because there's chocolate in the packets, and I always want to get chocolate, and the ushers never bring me a newcomer's packet. They seem to think I've been here before. But I, the one who's here right now, haven't been. I'm not the same as the one who was here last week. Neither are you, by the way. We're all here for the first time. Yes? There's that wonderful old saying, if you can't dip your foot into the same river twice. I read, I'm going to divert slightly and possibly get a little bit political, but this is about Britain, not us. So I think I'm safer. And it was a comment that people, when they wanted to exit the economic union, the famous Brexit that is going on right now, had the idea that was you could enter into it, we had entered it, and we can step back out of it as though it was a place. But it's not a place, it's a process. And so what they're finding is they stepped in at one point in time, and now they stepped out at another point in time, and guess what? The world has changed. The world has evolved. Ernest Holmes says evolution is always forward. The world is always changing. And so it's not like, you can just walk into some place and I can just step right back out and be right in the same place that I was before. I'm not the same, the world's not the same. And so that's the change process that's happening. It's happening all around us, whether we're conscious of it or not. Most of us walk around dealing with this world as though it was a flat earth, right? Right? I mean, really. What did the sun do this morning? Rose, right? The sun rose. Did it really? No. We rotated. We're moving at about 1,000 miles an hour right now. Hang on, yeah. When Galileo introduced the idea that the Earth revolved around the sun instead of vice versa, it was a panic for people. They didn't have the concept of gravity in place yet. They didn't know what it was like. It's like, well, that can't be, because if that was the case and we go upside down, we'd fall off. They didn't have the idea of rotation and mass and gravitational pull and all that stuff. We're the same way. We think it's something new, and it looks scary, and it looks frightening, and all it is just something that I don't understand completely yet. But am I willing to go there and play? Am I willing to be like a Columbus and sail out, or Leif Erikson, and sail out into some place that I don't know for something that I'm not quite sure is there, but I'm going to go for it? One of my one of our congregants from the first service shared that her husband has been a football coach here in the regional area, and he wanted to move up. He wanted to move higher in that opportunities that he had. And so he decided that there's something like 100 schools in Boston. He decided to just go to Boston just out of the blue and go interview at schools, go start to meet people at schools just to see if he could get a better coaching job. And he did. She just said, he just landed it. They're going to be moving to Boston as soon as they can sell their house. And so, I'm not sure that's a wise idea for moving to Boston, but actually Boston's kind of a fun town. But that idea of I'm going to step out into the unknown and I'm going to trust that it will work out. That's powerful. That's willingness to get into an uncomfortable zone, a zone of discomfort, and try something new. And so that's the idea of, am I willing to welcome and make receptive a new idea in my life, to try something new, to be somebody new? So we have to remember that the only thing, whenever we're moving into that new, the only thing that we're moving into is more of the divine. More of that which we call spirit or God or the infinite presence. We're just moving into more of that. Each new person you meet is the face of God, right? Yes? Yeah. Look around. Look around. This is the face of God. You want to know what God looks like? You want to get a better relationship with God? Here you go. It's right here. It's right here. This is it. So we can be open and receptive and welcoming. We can be inquisitive and curious. Jesus at one point in time was in a house teaching, and a bunch of little kids wanted to come in, and they're kids. Here's this famous rabbi, right? And they wanted to say, who is this guy? Let's check him out, and like that. And they're trying to shoo the kids away, and he's saying, no, let him in, let him in. In fact, not only let him in, but we have to become more like that. We have to become open and curious and inquisitive in our lives. We become open, curious, and inquisitive with the spiritual principles, with how does my life work, with how can my life be better. So this week what I want to invite us to do as a spiritual practice is 3 things. Number 1 is to notice any resistance that I have to being open, welcoming, and receptive. And then about that resistance, welcome and be curious about it. Don't sit there and put a wall against that and say, oh, I shouldn't be feeling that. Just notice, I am feeling that. Come in and talk to me. What are you about? Be curious and open with your very own resistance. And just invite it in, get to know it better. What are you about? Secondly, practice being more open, receptive, and welcoming wherever you are this week. Perhaps here. Perhaps you're in line at the grocery store and it's taking a little while. Talk to the person next to you. Hi, my name's David. Who are you? I see you got some, Cocoa Puffs. I don't know, whatever. I loved Cocoa Puffs when I was a kid. You must have kids, or you must love Cocoa Puffs still as an adult, But get to know them. Talk to them. And then the third thing is welcome a new idea that's been knocking at your door. How many of you know that there's a new idea that's been knocking at your door that you haven't quite been open, receptive, and welcoming to, right? And so open up and let that in. Be curious about it. Explore it. Doesn't mean you have to dive right in and do it right away, but at least let it in. Open it up and say, welcome, come in, let's talk. I may kick you out after a while, but let's talk for now. So are you willing to play with that spiritual practice, with the idea of notice any resistance and just explore it? Practice being more open and receptive this week wherever you are, and then simply notice within internally being more open and receptive to a new idea that's knocking on your door. Are you willing to play with that this week? Cool, me too. I'm going to close with a poem. And this is a poem that was written by Emma Lazarus in the 1800s, and it's at the base of the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. And it's called Colossus. And for those of you who are not familiar with Colossus, Colossus was the name of the statue that was in the harbor at Rhodes in ancient Greece. And it was a large statue of a guy who was striding across in that conquering Greek mentality. We are going to go out and conquer the world. So it starts off about this. It starts off like this. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here, at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles, Mother of Exiles. From her heaven hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that the twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she, with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. That's a consciousness of this country for a long time. That's a consciousness in which the human spirit wants to participate at its core. We all want to be that place where we can be open, where we can be supportive, where we can be a blessing. We often ask, how can I be a blessing to the world? And this is one of the ways. Can I be open? Can I be receptive? Can I be curious about people around me, about ideas within me? And so I invite you to play with that this week. Let's move into prayer. So recognizing that there is only one infinite presence, one pure love, with no judgment, one and only one life. One life. As we contemplate what that really, really means, one life. That life of love, that life of good, that life of wisdom, that life of grace and beauty. We recognize that because there's only one life, that each of us and everything and everyone around us must be one of that infinite life. That there is no separation. There is nothing between us and the divine. Whether we remember it or forget it, in truth, there is nothing between us and that infinite presence, that infinite one life. We are it in form. We are each beautiful, perfect expressions of it. And so I speak my word that as we become more aware of that one life and our presence and our existence as that life, that we are open and see that in each other. That we become more open-hearted, more receptive, receiving, more welcoming to each other and to our own selves, to all the aspects of ourselves and each other and our lives. Because all we're becoming open and welcoming and receptive to is God, that infinite presence. And so for each of us who says yes to this, for each of us who practices this in even the smallest degree, I'm grateful, ever so grateful, because as we practice this, we lift the world. Because as we are open and loving and receptive to someone else, it gives them permission to be more open and loving and receptive. And then that person takes it more, and that person takes it more, and it webs out throughout the entire universe, throughout the entire world. And so I'm grateful to each of us who is willing to practice that in our lives, because we lift and make this world a better place as a result of that. And so I release this word into what we call the law, the process of creation, the process of manifesting our ideas into form, knowing that that law knows how to do that in our lives. And we simply open and are moved by that law, moved by those inner processes. We say yes and affirm that together by simply saying, and so it is. Bless you.